Welcome to SBIDER Career podcast
with Ed Hill
and Laura Guzman.
We are discussing the career trajectories of SBIDER researchers and also those who carry out important work that enables and supports the research being conducted.
In this episode, we are joined by Sam Sutherland. Sam is a research assistant and team member on the Human African Trypanosomiasis Modeling and Economic Predictions for Policy Research project, known by its acronym MEPP.
Join us as we discuss Sam's developing research interests and pathway leading to his current role. Hi Sam, thanks for joining us today.
Welcome to SBIDER Careers.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm very, very glad to be here. Excited.
Excellent. So we'd like to first ask, this current role is your first research role since completing your undergraduate studies. And we'd like to first ask if you'd be able to tell the listeners how you became interested in mathematical modelling and perhaps epidemiology more generally.
I've had an interest in maths for a while, as probably lots of people in sort of epidemiology and maths research kind of fields have. In terms of epidemiology itself, it's always been quite interesting to me. Even like in school, I actually started a project which we ran into data issues, but trying to scrape from Twitter the amount of people who are doing the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge. If you can, that probably dates me quite precisely because this was like 14, and so I was trying to do a project taking essentially people like the incidents of the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge on Twitter and trying to model that using, I was trying to use an SIR model to have a look at it. But, you know, I've always had quite an interest in the sort of epidemiology, mathematical modeling. But then that was only ever a sort of hobby on the side of the actual real serious maths. Then I went to uni, spent first year still being a very actual real serious pure maths kind of guy, and then I realized that, you know, there's fun applied maths out there. It's enjoyable. Since then I've just been interested in epidemiology, and now I'm doing it for a job, which is great.
That's excellent. And hearing the anecdote about like the Ice Bucket Challenge, etc., so that kind of real world type event, but then gets his interest about, in this case, all potential spreading type mechanisms.
Well, yeah, it's the sort of processes. Social contagion. You've got this sort of process where each person sort of one day later infects 3 people in a way. I mean, not quite, but yeah, it really is very similar to how diseases spread sort of in your network.
And now your role involves health economics and is part of the MEPP project, and this supports global efforts to eliminate human trafficking and trypanosomiasis. How did this opportunity arise, and what were your considerations when deciding your next steps after completing your undergraduate degree?
So actually, I was taking a module in my third year, which was run by Kat here, called Epidemiology by Example. And my favourite, I'm not saying this because she's my, maybe that's why I ended up here, but it was my favourite module of the entire degree. Great fun, and very practical, entirely coursework based. But yeah, so I took this module, was really enjoying it, doing quite well on it, and Kat mentioned that she was hiring for a research associate, and I saw that and thought that looks quite interesting. I'll have a look at the more details of it, and so I looked at the more details of it, and it went through the list of sort of requirements, the good mathematical background, the maths degree, but also things like solid programming background and ability to speak French. And I thought, well, so I took French A-level at school. I've always sort of enjoyed French as a language, and I thought, well, you know, this is kind of right up my alley. And then I saw in there willing to travel, and I was like, yes, this sounds like a great opportunity. So I applied, and then, well, one thing led to another, and here I am. So yeah, I had actually been planning on doing a master's straight after, because I went straight from my bachelor's. I'd been planning on doing a master's, but sort of sacked those plans off and came straight to this.
I think this gives a very, very nice example where there is perhaps a more common trajectory of completely undergrad, you do a master's, go on to a PhD, but then there are these other opportunities which arise where you get this research assistant type role, which are linked to specific projects, which can occur and which are also a route into a research type role.
Yeah, and one of the great things about this actually is in general, anybody who's doing a research role, if you've been working, I know how it works at Warwick, but there are similar pathways at other universities. If you've been working at Warwick for 3 years and you've published research, you can collate your research and your papers into a thesis, and then you can submit that like a PhD. And so actually the plan here is that I'm going to do that. And really I'm sort of doing a PhD alongside my role as a research associate, which is great. So sort of leapfrogging the masters, if all goes to plan, and hopefully ending up with a doctorate out of it, which is quite nice.
That would be fantastic. You mentioned about international aspects, which we'll get onto later in our chat. In your role and part of the HAPMEP project, you're part of a larger research team. And so I'd be interested if we could let the listeners know about, so day to day, what are perhaps typical tasks which you carry out both individually, but then also as part of this larger research team?
Well, so from what I gather, compared to some other projects in particular, there's a lot of meetings on HAPMEP, and that's because we collaborate with lots of people from lots of different countries. But so what that means practically is a lot of the work broadly, like in the most broad sense, collectively what we're all trying to do is take field expertise and knowledge and data and information on what's happening and try and use that to produce the best model of what's actually happening with sleeping sickness in these countries. So that means lots of talking to program directors and finding out what's been happening and what we need to change in our model to adjust that. And then the other part of it is taking the results of the model that we have and producing useful, actionable outputs to help the people, help the national implementation teams make decisions. So it's a lot of talking to them and finding out what they'd actually find useful, so we can not just sort of sit here and do our useless maths, but actually do something useful for them. So there's lots of meetings, but then there's also discussions amongst ourselves about how we're doing some of the modeling, sort of discussions on some stats, discussions on coding, tidying data. There's all sorts. You could say to an extent, it's kind of like your typical data science kind of job in a way, but with a lot more. Not necessarily a lot more action. There probably is a lot of meetings in general in other data science jobs, but yeah, I'd say lots of meetings, lots of writing code, lots of tidying data, lots of being confused and thinking about what to do next. I'd say that's my typical day. It's sort of some combination of those.
It sounds great that with this role you have quickly built the bridge between being in theory in the university and now being in an applied work that it's having impact.
Oh yeah, no, it's great. It's sometimes I sit there and I think, you know what, I've ended up in quite a nice job. Like it's so because you can feel yourself, you can feel sort of happy in your job. It's not like, because one of the classic alternatives, if you have a maths background or a maths modeling kind of background, is you can go into finance. And I feel, obviously, that there is more money in finance. This is not really a secret to anybody. But I feel like the job I have now feels more meaningful in a way than moving money around. It definitely doesn't earn as much money, but it's just how I make myself feel better. This is entirely just how I make myself feel happy.
The range of skill sets that you've described there, so it's like the analytical, technical ability, coding, then communicating, being able to onboard information, write reports, so the writing aspect, so it's like really encapsulating. Showcases how just day to day you have to utilize all these different abilities.
Oh yeah, no, it's definitely, I'd say communication is a big part of this kind of, in general, I think part of research in general, you need to be able to effectively communicate your outputs and also effectively communicate to people who might have information you want, what information you want and how they can help. It's very much there's communication at every stage of the process, communication going in, communication going out. You're not going to be able to do it on your own. other people have data you need and other people need your results. So communication has to happen, and it has to happen well. Otherwise, everything just takes longer, doesn't really work.
And the HATMEP project also has international collaboration and links to decision makers. So what have been your experiences so far with this aspect? Has it been as you anticipated, or anything taking you by surprise?
Well, so one of I would say the big perks of this job is I've done some travel to places that I would never have ordinarily thought to go. So, I mean, I've been to Cote d'Ivoire and the DRC. I'm going to Kenya and Guinea in the next month. And most of these places, if I'm thinking, where am I going to go on holiday? The DRC is not the first country that pops into my mind. But actually, no, I've drifted a bit from the question slightly, but this is one of the things that I really like about this job, actually, that I'm sort of seeing places and people that I wouldn't see otherwise. It's quite nice. I mean, this is purely selfish. It's nice to see some of the world. But in terms of the actual work with the collaborators, one of the things that I've really enjoyed actually has just been sort of meeting the people in these teams and sort of getting conversations with them either online or in person. Like the team from Cote d'Ivoire when I went there in September, all very friendly people, very lovely people to just spend some time with doing the work. Obviously, you're working together during the day, you're collaborating to produce the good modelling outputs, but actually they're just nice people to chat to in the evening. So a lot of the experience actually has been kind of personal and human. It's actually been really nice. In terms of effects on the day-to-day work, obviously having lots of collaborators means lots of meetings and lots of sending things to and fro and sort of checking in, which is actually good, I would say, insofar as it keeps you sort of along the right track at any given time. It's good to sort of keep you going in a direction that is useful, to have the sort of regular check-ins. So actually, that's one thing that has been good. There are definitely challenges. Sometimes there are internet connection problems. Varies a bit depending on which of our collaborators, but yeah, sometimes internet connection can be challenging. So sometimes there will be a meeting where we're just sort of sat there waiting for internet connection to come back for somebody, and so that can be, I mean, it is how it is. There's not much we can do about it. But yes, that's something that's, I guess, a downside of it, but it's not that disastrous. I think the sort of international collaboration aspect of it is great fun. I say not just great fun, very useful, very productive. Yeah, I think overall just quite good on all fronts.
That's really cool, and actually highlighting, as with a lot of the work we do these days, it's the digital aspect, the connectivity we have, where if we hit those technical difficulties, that can then put potential barriers in place to that carrying on. So there's a lot of other work happening too, as a effort being put in to ensure these collaborations can overcome the technical barriers which could happen.
And that probably didn't happen in the past anyway.
Well, yes. So very much these digital technologies have made this kind of collaboration a lot more possible, because we can broadly just have a video call with people and discuss stuff or send each other files in a way that just wasn't possible before. And so, I mean, I realize I'm sat here complaining about the times that it doesn't work, but like, it is still this amazing resource that we have to do this sort of cross-country collaboration essentially instantaneously. That is quite impressive when you think about it.
Strongly agree. I think it's incredible. So leading from that, the range of activities which you're involved in, is there any particular skill which you've developed or had to develop that perhaps you just originally didn't anticipate you would ever need or ever have to use?
Well, actually, I think the job advert was pretty good at saying the sort of broad range of skills you will need. I'd say it's not that there's any particular skill I didn't think I was going to need that I've suddenly been surprised by. It's more just sort of exactly how they're being used. Like you never know exactly what you're going to be doing in your day to day and sort of how it's going to work until you are doing it. So it's all the skills that you expect, but like, you know, over time by doing this job, I have I think, hopefully, just improved a bit on. So even the basic things like the how to send emails politely to collaborators, these kind of things, and in French. So it's a skill that if you'd asked me beforehand, I would have said, yes, this is a skill that I'm going to need. But it's developing these skills. I've like to think I've just got better at it over the 2 years. And so this is sort of across the board in all sorts of skills. It's not that there's any one skill that I wasn't expecting to need to develop. It's just been across the board, sort of just building quite a wide array of skills, really.
And highlighting that, basically building rapport via emails, etc. It's good you highlight that as an example.
And with the French and the sort of two VU split, and like one collaborator in Côte d'Ivoire who now we're definitely on two terms. That we're writing a paper together at the moment, definitely on two terms. But I don't know when we switched from VU to two. It was definitely VU at the start. It's definitely two now. But that period in the middle, I'm pretty sure I was probably getting it wrong. But he's very polite. He hasn't hasn't brought it up. But
email etiquette in multiple languages.
Oh yeah, it's hard enough in English.
And now to conclude all this experience you have, to those interested in working in epidemiology, modeling, and health economics, what would be one thing you would like those listeners to take away?
Well, it depends on what you find interesting, but this I find pretty much every day of my job broadly interesting. So, I mean, it's never very dull. And maybe that's because I haven't done enough writing yet. Maybe that maybe the paper writing will start to wear on me soon. But no, I definitely enjoy the job. I enjoy the talking to people because I'm collaborating in this job, and I think in general, lots of epidemiology and sort of other mathematical modeling as well. There's a lot of talking with other people, the people who have the data that you want to use, the people who want the results that you're producing. There's just a lot of people, and I quite like chatting to people. And I've just really enjoyed the very human aspect of it all, the sort of just chatting with everybody. I think that's something that you really do get in epidemiology. And maybe it's just, I know in HAT, in sleeping sickness, especially GHAT, Gambiense HAT, the kind that we work on, there's a very sort of close community internationally of other researchers, and I can't speak for other diseases because I've only worked on HAT so far. But yeah, there's definitely quite a close community of researchers around the world, researchers and implementers who all talk to each other. It's very friendly, very nice. Like you can go to a meeting and there are people there who you know and you can talk to. And I'd say actually that's one of the things that for me has been really nice about the role. And I would strongly say that's something, if you're interested in epidemiology or modeling or anything in this general kind of area, the sort of, I guess it is broadly data science modeling kind of thing. Yeah, it's definitely do it, give it a go. I realize I've been very lucky, I guess, in the opportunity I had in a job that really, I think, quite suited me was advertised to me pretty directly, which I think was great. I didn't actually have to do too much searching to find it. But if you find an opportunity that you think looks good, apply. I sort of applied just sort of not necessarily expecting to get it, just because, I'll give it a go. As much as anything, it'll be good practice in applying for jobs. And then I did get it, and I thought, oh, well, this is an excellent opportunity. But, if you're interested, do it. It's great career, great fun, very nice, lovely people.
Wow, amazing recommendation for everyone.
Well said. Thank you very much, Sam, for joining us today and sharing those experiences with us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, it's great to see and to share your excitement with your current role.
Well, thank you.
And thank you all for listening to this episode of the SBIDER Careers podcast. We hope you join us again next time.